Hello and welcome back to Uncovered, where I give you a rapid-fire rundown of the latest titles added to Xbox Game Pass that I won't be covering in First 15. Since I've been away from the channel, I haven't posted one of these in nearly 3 months, so this is a monster video to catch you up. And I'm starting with the most recent additions, so the games you've already heard about by now are at the end. As a reminder, this isn't a ranking or review, I'm just telling you what's new. Starting with Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess. It's a Japanese-inspired action strategy game from Capcom where you purify corrupted villages during the day and make preparations to defend against the evil hordes at night. You'll have villagers you can place to help with each battle or to do repairs around the village, which nets you valuable upgrades. You also have mini-boss arenas and challenges to break things up. So it's similar to a tower defense game, but with hack-and-slash action. The artwork looks great, and the game has been very well received so far, with the only issues I've seen some mention being that the game may be too easy and that it may be tedious given the animations you can't skip and how you navigate the levels. Now remember that as usual, most of these will be games I haven't played yet, so I can't speak to any of the feedback I see. I'm just passing it along in case you're interested. Next, we have Flintlock, the Siege of Dawn from the makers of Ashen. It's a Souls-light where you use magic and good old-fashioned bullets to fight back against the gods invading your world with the help of a fox-like companion. The emphasis here is on combat and traversal, and it's gotten a lot of coverage as sort of a AA game that's pretty and fun, but kind of forgettable or just not quite there yet. Since it's been making the rounds, I'm sure you can find reviews that go into depth about the gameplay loop and mechanics, or you can just jump into it yourself. That's the beauty of this list. All of the games are on Game Pass right now. Next is Dungeons of Hinterberg, a stylized action-adventure game set in the Austrian Alps where you explore, fight monsters, crawl dungeons, solve puzzles, and kick back and relax. You have both magic and weapons at your disposal. Traversal is varied, allowing you to climb, kayak, snowboard, and zip line around the mountain, and you build relationships with NPCs that let you upgrade your abilities and access new skills, which reminds me of Dreamscaper, only in the sense that friendships unlocked buffs I could use on my runs. Now, some of these games are so new that there aren't that many people playing them yet, and a lot of gamers ignore titles with indie-looking art styles like this one unless major outlets cover them, so I don't have that much feedback to pass on, except that it's been more or less universally praised so far, with some players likening it to Zelda. Next up is Magical Delicacy, a pixel art, Metroidvania-inspired platformer/cooking game, which is definitely a unique combination, and you play as a witch who cooks up different dishes and potions for the local townsfolk. You get your own shop that you can customize, you can forage or trade for ingredients, and the town is full of places to explore and NPCs to meet. The platforming seems to serve as a way to make exploration more engaging, allowing you to unlock new abilities, secrets, and shortcuts, and the feedback has been positive, with the few negatives I've seen being that the platforming doesn't feel great, and that the game meanders a bit, with it sometimes being unclear how to progress. It's not a short game, with people putting 20+ hours into it already, so if it's something that clicks for you and you like somewhat cozy games with simplified mechanics and pretty artwork, this may be for you. Speaking of cozy, next we have Flock, a multiplayer game where you collect creatures, craft a bit, and explore. The focus is on finding new creatures while admiring the beautiful sights, and from what I can tell, the map is a decent size with dozens of creatures to add to your flock. It's cross-play across Xbox generations, and you can play with 2 to 4 players online. I'm not sure about local, but this one is for a very specific gamer who just likes nice things. If that's you, you can check it out now. Next up is Chia, an open-world, physics-based tropical adventure where you sail, glide, swim, free climb, and more as Chia, a girl with the power to take control of any animal or object, which is neat considering that there are over 30 animals and hundreds of objects to find. There's a story and quests, and the game has combat, customization, puzzles, and NPCs. You can even play the ukulele. So it's another one with some Breath of the Wild inspiration, and the setting is based on New Caledonia, an island in the Pacific Ocean and the homeland of one of the studio's co-founders. It's been out for a while, and feedback on the gameplay is generally great, but the main complaints I've seen are that traversal sometimes feels cumbersome, except for the unique jump, that cutscenes are overdone, that there may be issues with achievement tracking, and that it can get boring over time or be a chore to 100%. Next, we've got Neon White, a single-player, speed-running first-person shooter with an interesting mechanic where you sacrifice your guns, which are card-based, for parkour skills on the fly. While it just came to Game Pass, I believe it's a couple of years old, and even though it looks a bit bare bones, a lot of people love it. It apparently plays well, and has some anime aesthetics that I appreciate. The dominant criticism I've seen about it by far is that the writing is cringy and teenage edgelordy, to the point where the dialogue, voices, and characters are insufferable. So if you like what you see, give it a shot, pun intended, but do so at your own risk. Next is the Case of the Golden Idol, another game that's a couple of years old and beloved by most who play it. It's a story-driven point-and-click detective game where you investigate a dozen grisly murders as an 18th century sleuth. Games like these live and die by their mechanics, and this one looks to have all the elements you'd want in a pure detective game, getting to explore and piece clues together to form your own theories about the murders, which span 50 years. The most common complaints I've seen are that when playing on PC, there's an issue with windowed mode, that the game is too short for the price, and that it's simply not fun, though that last one seems to come mostly from players of Obra Dinn, so it may say more about what they're comparing it to than how the game holds up on its own. Beyond that, it's not every day that you get small games so highly praised, so if you love point and clicks and love solving mysteries even more, maybe check it out. Next, we have Journey to the Savage Planet. You've probably seen this game because a lot of YouTubers played it when it first released, but it's a comedy action adventure where you explore alien worlds alone or online co-op with a friend and discover quirky alien weirdness while cataloging new life. But this is the Employee of the Month edition, which has been optimized to run better at 60 FPS, includes all prior patches and DLC, and has new cinematics. So if you have a friend you want to get stupid with and haven't tried the game yet, you might as well jump into this version. Next up is Robin Hood Sherwood Builders, which is a base building RPG set in Sherwood Forest. You of course play as Robin Hood, and the game includes mechanics you'd expect from the genre: hunting, crafting, stealing from the rich to give to the poor. You also get to meet some of the iconic characters from the Robin Hood tales. The core gameplay is that you build your settlement up to a town, recruiting settlers and managing the community and its resources, and it has a large map with a reputation system for factions, dynamic weather, and quests. Unfortunately, the reception has been mixed to poor, with the most glaring issues mentioned being that despite the cool premise, it feels very dated, from the graphics to the voice acting, and some elements are just bad, like the controls and UI. The consensus seems to be that this is an unfinished project to stay away from, but if you want to decide for yourself, you can do so right now on Game Pass, which I know I don't have to say because this whole video is about Game Pass. Sometimes I just like to use that as a segue. Next, we have SteamWorld Dig, a platform mining game with some Metroidvania influences and a steampunk western aesthetic. This is a game I never played, even though I think it originally released a decade ago, but you're literally digging to explore, uncovering treasures, avoiding hazards, and dealing with enemies, then heading back to the surface to trade for upgrades. It seems like one of those games people have a nostalgic love for, and the execution is great for portable, so I'm not surprised to hear that it was popular on the 3DS, and that folks are loving it now on their Steam Deck. Game Pass also added the sequel, SteamWorld Dig 2, which is said to be more of the same core gameplay, but with upgraded visuals, better exploration, and more characters and secrets to discover. It seems like it has an addictive loop, so if you're into games like Spelunky and Motherlode, which is what this franchise has been compared to most, why not dig into it? Next up is Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, which is exactly what it sounds like, a Super Smash Bros. All-Stars-like brawler featuring characters from popular Nickelodeon shows like SpongeBob and Jimmy Neutron. They upgraded a lot from the first game, including the movesets, animations, stages, and modes, and there's now a roguelike single-player campaign. But the response seems to be that while it's a vast improvement over the first, it's still a janky Smash Bros. Clone that you'll either find fun despite that, or really lackluster, needing more time and care than players seem confident the devs are going to provide. I don't have a leg in this race because I'm not really into brawlers of this type, but if you're interested enough in fighting games to at least try it, now you can. Next, we have the Kalisto Protocol, a third-person sci-fi shooter where you're trapped in a prison on Jupiter's moon when all hell breaks loose, and you've probably already played it or watched other people play it by now. Its reception was mixed, with it being praised for the visuals, atmosphere, and cinematics, while poo-pooed for the pacing, melee combat, repetitive drawn-out boss fights, and shorter playtime of around 10 hours that made it feel both like a slog and like it went by too quickly. I watched someone play it, so I'll pass, but if you love horror that leans more into attempting a Dead Space feel, even if it doesn't succeed, you may enjoy it. On the other end of the spectrum, as far as reception goes, we have Still Wakes the Deep, a story-driven first-person horror game where you play as a worker on an oil rig off the coast of Scotland who finds himself trapped in a nightmare when they drill into the unknown. It was developed by the Chinese Room, who also made Amnesia: A Machine for Pigs, Dear Esther, and Everybody's Gone to Rapture, and if you somehow manage to hear nothing about this, it's pretty much universally praised for everything from the voice acting to the graphics, the original story, creature design, and setting. The main gripes you may see are that it's short at around 4 to 5 hours, and that it can feel like a walking sim with some stealth or running sequences thrown in. Next, we have My Time at Sandrock. It's a life sim RPG from the My Time franchise that includes My Time at Portia, which I thought was delightful. Where that game is set in more of a lush island environment, this one is set in a desert community, and it pretty much has everything you could ask for in a life sim. It has the basics like crafting, building, farming, fishing, and skill progression, extras like quests, relationships with fleshed out NPCs that have diverging storylines of their own, mounts, creature companions, dungeons with, of course, combat, and even more extras like a weather system and mini games and special events. And you can play co-op with up to 4 friends. It's one of those games you can easily sink 100 hours into and still not feel like you've seen everything or experienced the entire story. I didn't have time to dive into Portia as much as I wanted, but if Sandrock really is more of the same, I'd highly recommend it for lovers of charming sims. But I apologize ahead of time now because I'm going to push through the rest of these a lot faster. I still have a ton of additions left to mention, so hopefully the footage and a quick overview will be enough for you to get the gist. With that, we have Kepler, which is a 2D top-down sandbox RPG with survival elements. The emphasis seems to be on building and exploring, but there's farming and combat. There are also pets and mounts, and there's a gene editing system that allows hundreds of different combinations for character creation. The most common comparisons I've seen are to Terraria and RimWorld, but with mechanics closer to Don't Starve and Minecraft. And it's supposed to have co-op, but some players have said they couldn't get it to work. The devs do seem to have a roadmap for the game though, and are trying to keep up with it, so hop in if it looks like your thing. Next is Isanzo, a tactical first-person shooter set in World War I across the Italian Alps. You play through several historical battles in 48-player matches, and you can choose from 6 classes or build your own loadout with over 50 weapons from the Great War. Not that there was anything great about it, haha! It's been likened to a mixture of Hell Let Loose and Battlefield, and the reception has been mainly positive. Next, we have Depersonalization, which is a Lovecraftian horror RPG similar to Call of Cthulhu. I never play games like this to even begin to explain how it works, so if you are familiar with the genre, I'd encourage you to check out a review to learn more. It's still unpolished, being in early access, and there are some localization issues the devs are currently trying to address. Other than that, it seems like a really interesting concept with a lot of potential that people are enjoying so far. Next is Octopath Traveler, the beloved RPG from Square Enix that originally released in 2018, where you embark on 8 adventures with 8 different travelers, hence the name. Combat is turn-based, it's a character-driven narrative journey, and the style is inspired by retro 2D games, just in a 3D world. It's critically acclaimed and worth playing if you love classic RPGs. They also added the sequel, Octopath Traveler 2, which follows 8 new travelers with higher quality graphics, and it has new systems like a day-night cycle that you can switch at will, a new tale where 2 travelers can follow the same path, new ways to travel the world, like by river or sea, and new latent powers unique to each traveler. So if you like the first game, this is more of the same with extra pepperonis on top. Next, we have Rolling Hills, a cozy restaurant sim where you play as a sushi bot who wants to become a world-class chef. You build up your recipes and ingredients, customize your restaurant, and get to know the people of the town. It's cute and the artwork is lovely, but the feedback is that it's very easy and can be boring at the start, not having as much to do. It is said to pick up the further along you get, and a lot of players are still enjoying it, though your mileage may vary. Next up is Firework, a Chinese horror puzzle game set in a remote mountain village where you play as a rookie cop investigating a reopened cold case. It includes elements of Chinese folklore and history. All the characters in the game matter, according to the devs. It has a great atmosphere and soundtrack, according to the players, and the artwork is lovely. It's definitely one for people who enjoy point-and-click games. I'm considering playing it on the channel, but I'm not sure yet, which is why I'm mentioning it now. But if it sounds like your cup of tea, go ahead and drink it. Next is Botney Manor, a short first-person puzzle game set in a Victorian manor where you use clues and research to figure out how to grow different plants. It's peaceful with a lovely setting to explore and uncover more about the botanist's life. And reception was mostly positive, with the main complaints being the lack of content for the price, a save bug where the game restarts when you hit save, which I don't know has been resolved or not, and backtracking to get information instead of the character taking notes. So if you like pretty puzzle games that are otherwise stress-free, this may be for thee. Next up is Humanity, a game similar to Lemmings, only you're a dog controlling massive hordes of humans to solve a wide range of puzzles, either in story mode or in user-made levels. It's also VR compatible. It's clever and chaotic and people love it. I don't even think I've seen a single complaint about it to pass on. I'm sure one exists, I just haven't seen it. But that's a ringing endorsement as far as I'm concerned from the gaming community, so if you like unique puzzle games, check it out. Next up, we've got Moving Out 2, the sequel to the silly, physics-based moving game where you and up to 3 friends help city residents pack up and move out. It has both local and online co-op, and you can explore new worlds with a new cast of characters. There's also a host of accessibility options. The feedback is okay, with the most common complaints being issues with multiplayer connectivity and progression. Next, we have Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, a Grimm fairy tale puzzle adventure, not Grimm like Brothers Grimm, but Grimm like Dark, where you play as two brothers on a journey to save their father's life. Most people know this game already. It's critically acclaimed and well loved, not only for its story, but for the way it handles controlling the two characters, which is why a gamepad is required. So if you like games with simple puzzles that allow you to immerse yourself in the story and world without too much frustration, and you haven't played this one yet, I'd strongly recommend it. Next is Little Kitty Big City, which unsurprisingly is a cat game where you explore a city, making friends and mischief while trying to find your way home. It's not a complex game. You roam around, go on quests, interact with the environment, and there's a lot of humor and personality to the cat and the other animals you encounter along the way. The game is kind of blown up and the reception is really positive, so if you like cozy experiences and kitty go meow meows, you'll probably like this. The most critical feedback I've seen is that it's unpolished and buggy, from things like getting stuck in the geometry to some experiencing crashes or issues with their saves. The game is also short at around 3 or 4 hours. Next up is Manor Lords, the long-awaited medieval strategy game, which is still in early access. The mechanics are robust enough here that I'd recommend watching a review to fully understand what you're getting, but it's like a sim that has everything from city building, complete with an economy and social dynamics, resource management and trade, to tactical battles, and the seasons change. It's a kind of game I can play for hours, and while it's not perfect, with some players feeling that it has a lot of wrinkles to iron out, the solo developer seems invested in improving it. So if you'd love to be a Manor Lord and haven't jumped into it yet, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Next, we have Star Wars Jedi Survivor, the follow-up to Respawn's Fallen Order. It's a third-person action-adventure set in the Star Wars universe, and if you're a gamer, you already know it exists. The reception was mixed, not because of the game itself, but because it had a lot of performance issues on PC, many of which haven't been resolved, though some players improved their experience using mods. The game was optimized for console, however, so you don't have to worry about that as much, but just keep that in mind if you'd rather play it on PC. Next is Another Crab's Treasure, a story-driven Souls-like about another crab's trash and using it to fight your way through a vibrant sea of enemies to get back your home. It's supposedly designed so that players from a range of skill levels can explore and engage in fights at their own pace. There are over 50 shells for you to try, along with a variety of weapons and abilities, and lots of humor to enjoy. Feedback on the game is mostly positive, with the main complaints being issues with the save system, which may or may not have been addressed at this point, lackluster progression with stat upgrades feeling ineffective and inconsistent, bad camera movement, and combat that's clunky and unresponsive. So for a game where the combat is meant to be a highlight, you may want to see how it feels before you decide to fully jump in. Next up, we've got Auden Chronicle: 100 Heroes, which is a modern turn-based JRPG. This was a Kickstarter game that most players liken to the Suikoden series, and has been well received, with the criticism I've seen most boiling down to it being pretty basic and bland as far as its characters and mechanics, feeling almost outdated in some ways. And that's even from players who enjoyed it. So it's another one where the game may be good overall, but not be up to snuff if you were hoping for something different or more. Next is Recfest, a demolition derby-style racing game that has soft body damage modeling, in-depth upgrading, and customization. It has both demolition and traditional tracks, fun challenge modes, mod support, and a career mode where you can unlock new cars and upgrades. A lot of players enjoy it, but do have a lot of critiques, like a lack of content and support, progression not being compelling, it feeling like a stripped-down version of Flat Out, and multiplayer on PC requiring port forwarding. And you can look up more about that if you like. Next, we have Deep Rock Galactic, a first-person shooter where you mine procedurally generated caves, fending off alien creatures in a fully destructible environment to bring back your haul. You can play solo or with up to 3 friends. There are 4 classes to choose from, and it's basically a fun horde shooter. It's been around for a while now, and a lot of YouTubers have played it, but the main problem I've seen cited, besides the lack of new content causing it to get stale, and issues for people with color blindness, is with online multiplayer being a mess, with you getting paired up with really bad people basically, and with players getting kicked for no reason. So if you do jump in, maybe stick to playing solo or with people you actually know. Getting down to the wire, we have Orcs Must Die 3, a sort of action strategy tower defense game where you're mowing down hordes of orcs. You can play solo or 2-player co-op. There are new war scenarios that pit players against orc armies. There are mountable machines, more traps, more weapons and upgrades, a new story set 20 years after the last game, weekly challenges, a new scramble mode where orcs evolve with each level you survive, and the Drastic Steps campaign is included. General players enjoy it, but some longtime players of the franchise see it as a huge step down from the first 2 games, despite still being fun. So if you have nothing to compare it to, you may get more out of it than them. Next is Hbit, a handmade narrative adventure game about life on a spaceship in an alien ocean. Some of the pros are obvious. It has beautiful stop-motion styled animation from traditionally sculpted models, a cinematic style of storytelling, and it's fully voiced. So most people will tell you that this game is special, and they loved it. I wanted to love the game and plan to play it on the channel. I still might, but when I played the demo, I couldn't finish it because the clunkiness of the controls, the lack of polish with the camera and animations, and the slow pace sucked all of the enthusiasm out of me. So again, simply because I agree that it's special in the care it takes with the story and art direction, I may still play it one day, but if you're going into it, just keep in mind that it may not be as polished of an experience as a regular game. Next is Shadow of the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition. I'm not going to explain the game, just the edition, which has the base game, all DLC challenge tombs, and all weapons, outfits, and skills. They also added the definitive edition of Tomb Raider, the first game in that modern trilogy, which includes bonus content and all of the DLC from the Xbox 360 version. Next, we have Kona, a surreal story-driven survival adventure set in 1970s Canada, where you investigate a mysterious town in a blizzard. It's an atmospheric mixture of survival elements and detective work that's been around for years now, and while most people love it and think it's worth playing if you like mysteries, the story does fall short for some as far as what's explained and what you learn compared to the amount of exploration you do. That may or may not have been rectified with the sequel, which is also on Game Pass now, where you're again exploring the mysteries of the snowy Canadian terrain, this time a mining village in Quebec. The reception here is mixed, with some saying it's a great follow-up and others saying it's a huge step down due to it being less engaging with less content, having more fetch-questy exploration, and a loss of the supernatural atmosphere from the first game. And neither game is very long, with both clocking in under 10 hours, I think, so if you're at least curious about the games, the first in particular being a must-play for some, at least you can knock them out in a weekend. Next is Super Hot Mind Control Delete, which is the third game in the Super Hot franchise. If you've never heard of it, I'm not sure how, but it's a shooter that leans heavily on time manipulation, with the hook being that time only moves when you do. This outing is more of the same for the first two games, but with more of everything else. New enemies, weapons, skills, character builds, progression, and lore. The one complaint I've seen is that despite the novelty of some of the new mechanics, and it being more challenging than the first game, it gets repetitive and overstays its welcome. I love Super Hot, so I may check this one out, but depending on how it feels, I may not finish it. Next, we have Ark Survival Ascended, which is basically Ark revamped from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5. So new graphics, new artwork, new lighting and physics, etc. It includes access to Scorched Earth, Aberration, Extinction, Ark Genesis 1 and 2, and beyond, with the island, Scorched Earth, and the center already being released. It supports cross-platform modding and cross-platform multiplayer, and online multiplayer supports up to 70 people. And sorry that I'm not explaining what Ark is, I'm just assuming that you already know it's a survival game with dinosaurs that you can also tame. Now, I personally played Ark Survival Evolved almost religiously for years when it first released, then I went back to it from scratch for the channel, but decided not to keep up with it despite adoring it, and the feedback seems to be that Survival Ascended is like they did a poor job of remastering Evolved, where things look better, but everything plays worse. I recommend watching an in-depth review if you're interested in the specific changes they made to things like balancing and other mechanics that players haven't been thrilled about, but it's another one where if you have nothing to compare it to because you never played it before, you may like it more than seasoned players familiar with the franchise. Next is Immortals of Avalon, which is available through EA Play. It's a single-player, first-person magic shooter where you play as a battle mage trying to save the world. It's fast-paced with over 24 spells and 80 abilities to unlock, and there are hundreds of pieces of gear that you can find and upgrade to mix and match with your playstyle across 3 different magic disciplines. The consensus seems to be that it's fine, it looks great, and it's fun, but if you want more interesting lore, don't like this style of shooter, or experience performance issues, then it may get boring. So this is one where, especially with it being an original IP, I'd say to jump in and decide for yourself. Next, we have Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, which got a ton of hate. And this is the cross-gen bundle that includes a version for Xbox One and Series S and X. Not that you asked, but I'm a huge Call of Duty fan because I'm a huge fan of shooters in general, especially military shooters. But thanks to time and money, I fell off the franchise, just like I fell off Battlefield. The last COD game I played was Infinite Warfare. I played the hell out of that, and every single title from that one going back to the first. I did play World War II, but I dropped off it pretty early, so I don't count it. And since I'm a player who loves the campaigns as much as I love multiplayer and other modes like zombies, Black Ops 4 not having a campaign and the way they handle classes made me not bother with it. And then I just stopped playing COD in general to save my money for more important things, not counting the few times I hopped into Warzone. My point is that regardless of the quality or reception, any Call of Duty entry I didn't play that's added to Game Pass, I'm going to play through the campaign just to catch myself up. Next is LEGO 2K Drive, the cross-gen edition, and it's an open-world racing game with LEGO. You can do individual races, story mode, or tournaments. You build and customize vehicles with LEGO blocks, and you can play local split screen or online. The reception's been pretty cold, with complaints about it being too chaotic, clunky, and grindy with its progression, especially when things like speed are determined more by levels than by your car. It's another one that may warrant the disclaimer to play at your own risk. Next, in stark contrast, there's Turbo Golf Racing, which looks like mini Rocket League, only you're playing golf with cars instead of soccer/football. There are 8-player Grand Prix style races, regular golf matches, time trials, over 80 levels, tons of customization and power-ups, and best of all, most people who got into it seem to love it. Those who didn't like it, despite the promising concept, complained mainly about the dwindling player base that made matchmaking pretty impossible, the ranking system, issues with the physics not being consistent and predictable like in a game like Rocket League, a lack of modes, and it being more of an only online live service model. Next are a few sports games I'm not going to explain because you'd already be playing them if you play them, but we've got EA Sports PGA Tour and NHL 2024, both available through EA Play, Cricket 2024, and EA Sports FC 2024. Finally, wrapping things up, there were also some games added for PC that have no store page because they're only available to install through the Xbox app in partnership with EA. Those would be SimCity 3000 Unlimited, Populous, The Beginning, and Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri Planetary Pack Edition, which includes the original Alpha Centauri game and the expansion Alien Crossfire. I'll post a link to every other game in the box so you can check them out. And since I haven't done one of these in a while, I thought I'd end it with a bit of info for any newcomers. This series is called Uncovered because I only list titles added to Game Pass that I don't plan on covering on my channel otherwise. So if I don't mention a game, it's because I'm either playing the intro in first 15 or I'm doing a full playthrough. I also won't typically mention when they add DLC or updates to pre-existing games, like when they updated Fallout 4 back in April or released the fully yoked edition of Grounded. But I'll link to information about those if you're interested because they did happen while I was away. And I won't mention if something is coming back to Game Pass after being removed at some point because I'm not interested in tracking that. This is about what's added, not what existed before. Finally, when considering reviews that I pass on to you, I tend to lean more on the consensus I see from message boards, gaming news, and places like Reddit and Steam rather than Xbox, because Xbox reviews are dookie with the number of Game Pass members especially who review bomb anything that's indie or that they see as woke, a word I'd really love to go away now. So if I say a game is well received, but you look at the reviews on Xbox, see that it's at a 1, and wonder where I got that opinion, the answer is probably not there. I like to focus on the reception of the concrete aspects of a game, like its features, performance, and controls, rather than subjective, cultural, or political discourse that detracts from substantive critique, like complaints that a character is gay. So if you're worried about a game having an agenda with a capital A, go read up on the game yourself, because I have no interest in discussing stuff like that here. That's it for catching you up, so let me know if you've been looking forward to any of these games, or if you've already been playing one of them and have something to say about it in the comments that others may want to know. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you back here soon with more Uncovered.